إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وأحسن هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. As we continue in the chapter of al-isti'adha, باب من الشرك الاستعاذة بغير الله تبارك وتعالى. As from the chapter from polytheism is to seek refuge in other than Allah subhanahu jalla fil ula. We first covered the ayah the ayah which comes in Surah Al-Jinn. So Allah Ta'ala had informed the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam of what took place of the affair of the jinn, and some of what takes place with the unseen was informed to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where the jinn had gathered up to listen to the recitation of the Quran, and they returned back to their people, warning them, meaning delivering the message and conveying the proper message to the rest of the people from the jinn. We finished and concluded the ayah and the other ayats that established the matter of how al-isti'adha, seeking refuge, is an affair that is of ibadah, that is only exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that this affair, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, is not an affair of where it's permissible for one to seek refuge in the creation. Rather, that it's in a matter that is only from the huquq, from the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And from His rights is that one seek refuge in Him solely and exclusively, and that worship is only for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. In regards to what took place between the jinn, as we talked about, alhamdulillah, we already discussed it. We talked about an ayah in which is not mentioned here in the chapter, which was mentioned in Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 128, of which the jinn have mentioned, and likewise how mankind will say how they enjoyed, how they partook in enjoying one another in this dunya, which came as a result of them dwelling in the hellfire forever. And we talked about the tafsir of the meaning of that ayah, of the benefit of knowing that the worship of Allah Ta'ala, of isti'adha, of seeking refuge, is extracted from the meaning or the tafsir or the commentary of the ayah, as we talked about and discussed. From those affairs of how they enjoyed one another in this dunya, is when mankind sought refuge in the jinn, and which came as a result of it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, all of you will dwell in the hellfire forever. For that was one of the meanings of enjoyment, meaning how man had enjoyed the jinn, and how the jinn took and partook in enjoyment with mankind, and vice versa. So both affairs were established of how we explain how mankind enjoyed or partook in enjoyment with the jinn, which was how, what did we say last class? From that is of seeking refuge in the jinn. And the jinn, like we said, enjoyed where they had seen that mankind give them some type of power and domination and glorification to the point where they sought their protection from all types of evil. Which we said as a result of it, this type of protection that was sought from mankind to the jinn, which made them become even more powerful in their domination, where they had instilled fright and horror inside of mankind. Especially what we said in regards to this ayah, Surah Al-Jinn. We said that from the affairs of Jahiliyyah, before Islam, that a person was to come to a desolate, remote valley, if he would descend in a valley, that he would say, A'udhu bi sayyidi hadal wadi. He said, I seek refuge in the most dominant of the jinn of this valley. And that particular jinn, in exchange, was so-called, give them protection, but it wasn't protection. Rather, they would trick the human beings by instilling horror or fear and frighten them as a compensation for them asking them for protection. But it was a kind of like trick that the jinn had did to the human beings, so they can keep and consistently seek refuge in them and seek their protection. Whereas a result of it, like we said, horror and fright was instilled inside of the human beings from the jinn themselves. But the jinn, ya ma'ashal ikhwa, like we said, Allah Ta'ala had talked about how all of them will be in hell, whereas in this dunya they were servicing one another. Whereas the human being also sought service from the jinn. Whereas the jinn would give them some type of service, whether it be in this dunya, whether it be of knowing something of the unseen, such as palm reading or psychic telling or things of that matter. That's also from the jinn or the human beings partaking in enjoyment of the jinn, and likewise the jinn enjoying the human beings. For verily, in regards to knowledge of the unseen, which is, as we know, is a bunch of lies, in which Allah Ta'ala had explained how the jinn, in actuality, they themselves are what takes place for human beings, meaning what has been preordained and destined. They don't truly know the full truth, except what they steal from the heavens and what they pass down of lies to the psychic palm reader. But however, that type of affair still is connected with the shayateen and the jinn, in which the human beings utilize the jinn in order to attain some type of affair of the unseen, even though it might have lies in it. And likewise of how the human beings and the jinn partook in enjoyment of one another in regards to magic, or the practice of magic, or afflicting one with some type of harm from the affairs of the shayateen, in which they attack certain people, or what have you. All these affairs, and like we said, which will come as a result of it in the hereafter, will allow certain people and those from the jinn will enter the hellfire and dwell in it forever for this type of service. And we know that the jinn and the shayateen doesn't service anyone unless, number one, you disbelieve. You disbelieve, and you start to even worship them and direct your worship towards them. Hence, when one now directs his worship to the jinn, and he makes himself subservient to the jinn and worships them and commits an act of kufr, not only just worshiping them and doing a lot of other affairs, such as, for example, you'll find them doing strange things, such as burning the Quran, or you'll find from those who worship the shayateen, they're taking, for example, in types of impurities of urine and feces and wiping it on certain things or wiping on certain places. All these are a type of affairs that the jinn loves, which comes as a result of it that they will service the human being. affairs of what? Which is considered kufr and disbelief, and things which are filthy and nasty and disgusting and repulsive, which will come as a result of it. Like we said, the jinn will give some type of what? Service to the human being, on the condition that the human being disbelieves first. If he disbelieves, then likewise, like we said, the jinn will give a compensation or give some type of service to the human being, which as a result of it, if you notice in the ayah, which is a Surah Al-An'am, Allah Ta'ala says, your dwelling place will be hell, all of you, together. For in regards to what we mentioned and said, for this ayah, from the meaning of the ayah, which is in Surah Al-An'am, from those affairs in which the jinn, or rather human beings, rather used the jinn and the jinn used the human beings, was in the affair of isti'adah, of seeking refuge. Where the human beings sought refuge in the jinn, and as a result of it, the jinn had what? Gave them some type of service. That type of usage of one another in this dunya was a reason for them entering the hellfire and the hereafter. So that is one of the tafasir, of the meanings of the commentary of the ayah, which we mentioned last class. Of that ayah, which is not in your books. It's sort of an ayah is not in it's not in everyone, it's not in the books, I don't think, at all. It's not either in mine. But however, that ayah was mentioned in some of the commentary. So for example, Fath al-Majid. You'll find that the ayah where even Al-Mullah Ali Qari al-Hanafi that he mentioned and said, لا يجوز الاستعاذة بالجن. فقد ذم الله الكافرين على ذلك. For the ayah that he mentions in Surah Al-An'am. ويوم نحشرهم جميعا يا معشر الجن قد استكثرتم من الإنس وقال أولياؤهم من الإنس ربنا استمتع بعضنا ببعض وبلغنا أجلنا الذي أجلت لنا قال النار مثواكم خالدين فيها إلا ما شاء الله إن ربك حكيم عليم. Allah Ta'ala says in His book, on the day where Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will gather mankind and jinn, gather them all together, and Allah Ta'ala will address the jinn, and He will say to them, Ya ma'ashal al-jinn, qad istakthartum min al-ins. Verily you have misled a lot of human beings. You have accumulated, you have amassed, and you have gathered and happened to what? Mislead an abundance of human beings, a large group of them. And their awliya, from those who are close to them in this dunya, from their awliya, from the ins, will say, O our Lord, we enjoyed one another. And we reached the appointed term, or the appointed time, in which you have what? Set for us. And to Allah Ta'ala said what? All of your dwelling places will be what? Both of you, together, in hell. What type of enjoyment? Why? And like we said, from the tafasir of the Salaf and from them, of what Ibn Kathir mentioned and said, of why they will be in hell is because how the human being used to seek refuge in the jinn. Was a reason, as a result of it, of why they became in the hellfire. So that was one ayah in which you'll find that the ai that they use in order to show how the isti'adah is a type of worship which will only be for Allah Ta'ala. Only. And that to give that haqq of Allah to other than Him will be falling into major polytheism, which will come as a result of it. One, absolutely, totally nullifies his Islam. You'll find that those who are from the a'immat al-dalal, the imams of misguidance these days, especially what takes place in some of those gatherings of innovated practices in which you'll find that certain people celebrate the Prophet's birthday, which is something that is an innovative practice, and in it is resemblance to the Christians and what have you. You'll find from those who encourage one to memorize poetry, calling on the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, is Hamzah Yusuf. Where you'll find that Hamzah Yusuf even encourages his followers to memorize the poetry called Al-Burda by Al-Busayri. The Burda Al-Busayri, as I spoke about this in another class, is a poetry that is filled with polytheism, of calling on the Prophet ﷺ, calling on him and seeking refuge in the Messenger of Allah, and also calling him out to ask him for some good. of all that is only from the rights of Allah. And he binds upon his followers to memorize the poetry of Al-Burda by Al-Busayri. You'll find the poetry of Busayri called the Burda, Al-Burda by Al-Busayri, which is a poetry that's filled with polytheism, in which Hamzah Yusuf tells his followers to memorize, have it memorized. And then people wonder why the Muslims criticize, and they are very severe and harsh against Hamzah Yusuf, due to the fact that you encourage your followers to memorize poetries that are filled with polytheism, which is the most filthiest act that any human being could commit. You tell the people to memorize this type of poetry that contains this type of polytheism. And from that poetry that you'll find that he even says, he even mentions it, says it, he says, Ya Akram, he's talking about the Prophet ﷺ in the poetry. Ya Akram al-Khalqi ma li man aludhu bihi, yani a'udhu bihi, siwaka inda huduth al-hadith al-amami. In lam takhudh يوم القيامة بيدي وإلا فقل يا زلة القدم فإن من جودك الدنيا وضرتها ومن علومك علم اللوح والقلم. One part of the poetry he says يا أكرم الخلق ما لي من ألوذ به عند سواك عند الحدوث الحادث العممي. He says, oh, the most greatest and the most honorable of all creation. He's talking about the Prophet ﷺ. He's not talking about Allah. He said, the Akram al-Khalq. He's talking about, now listen to the old poetry. You'll find that the rights of Allah, he makes it and gives it to the Prophet ﷺ. Yet mali man aludhu bihi. Who's the one that I can seek refuge in? Of good. He's talking about of good. Siwaka inda al-huduth al-hadith al-amami. Who can I seek, attain that protection? Who can give me that refuge? He says, when the general types of events or current events take place in the world, in the dunya, who can I take refuge and protection and seek his protection other than you? The poetry contains in it what? Polytheism. You'll find that Hamzah Yusuf binds upon the people memorization of the Burda by al-Busayri, of what it contains. He tells them to memorize it. The Burda. But this is the point to show how there are Muslims out there that recite this poetry. And you'll find that a lot of them have it memorized. Not realizing that it opposes those affairs in which we're establishing right now, what we're discussing, of the ibadat of Allah Ta'ala, such as isti'adah. And giving it to other than him, even the Messenger of Allah still doesn't what? Justify it and make it right at all. So those are the reasons of why we criticize Hamzah Yusuf and those miscallers of misguidance, based upon the fact of why, of what they're involved in and what they call the people to of polytheism, especially deviation in the fundamentals of a Muslim to the point where those affairs will render one's Islam invalid and null and void. For that is the reason why we learn in these affairs of isti'adah, from the huquq of Allah Ta'ala, which is what, or the rights of Allah, is that isti'adah is only done for him. So you'll find that the great Imam, Shaykh Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, used the ayah. Also you'll find that he also goes to the authentic sunnah. As the authentic sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ likewise establishes the matter of al-isti'adah. For if you look in your books of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, on the authority of Khawla binti Hakim, radiyallahu anha wa ardaha. Khawla, as her kunya was Shurayk. Her kunya is Shurayk. Shurayk, from Sharik. Shurayk. Khawla binti Hakim, her kunya was Shurayk. Shurayk. Shurayk was key, and is mentioned in the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that she was the one that offered herself to the Prophet ﷺ. She was the one that offered and donated to herself in that hadith, which is al-Bukhari. That what? The hadith where there was a woman that came to the Messenger of Allah and donated and offering herself to the Messenger of Allah to marry him, alayhi salatu wasalam. It was said that the woman that offered herself was Khawla, binti Hakim, Shurayk. For this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that it says, Man nazala manzilan, whoever descends in a place, and he says, A'udhu bi kalimati Allahi tammat, min sharri ma khalaq, la yadurruhu shay, hatta yabtahila min manzilihi dhalik. He says, whoever descends in a desolate place, he says, I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah from the evil what He created. He says it 3 times. He said nothing will harm him until he leaves that place of his off. For this hadith, you'll find that the great Imam that he used as an evidence in order to show how al-isti'adha is only for Allah wa ta'ala. And it's also extracted from this narration other affairs which we'll establish and we'll clarify momentarily. طيب. Whoever descends in any type of manzilan. Manzilan means any type of dwelling place or any place. It descends in it, whether it has light in it or whether it has darkness in it or what have you. Notice that the Prophet ﷺ has said he makes a dua. A lot of the supplications and a lot of things in the Shara' and the Kitaab and Sunnah, you'll find that Allah Ta'ala remove affairs of Jahiliyyah and He would give the Muslims in exchange something better. And something that was what? As a badil, as an exchange, which is good for them. For verily, as we know from the adat of Jahiliyyah prior before Islam, that they used to seek refuge in the jinn. Allah Ta'ala eradicated that and switched it and gave them something of Tawheed, monotheism, number 1. And secondly, giving them some type of protection on top of that, which is number 2. For those type of supplications in which Allah gave as an exchange, which has monotheism in it, and I will also likewise give them and grant them true protection. These supplications in which the Prophet ﷺ had commanded, like we said, in numerous supplications, which will remove the evil of what takes place of this world, and it will aid one in protection and fortifying him from certain things that will harm him, whether it be physically or in certain other affairs or in his household or in his family or what have you. A lot of the supplications that are made for protection for our children, protection for ourselves, protection for our hearts, all of them have been legislated upon the tongue of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. This hadith, likewise, similar to that, will grant one protection of any type of physical harm or anything that will take place from the animals or anything from the khalq of what will give you harm, of what contains in it some type of evil, and which we'll discuss inshallah. Because there's some certain things of the creation that is pure good, which we'll discuss in a moment. The hadith mentions, it says, I seek refuge, which we know is the mawdi'u shahid, or the point of reference in the hadith here. A'udhu, I seek refuge. So you see in the point of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever says, I seek refuge, and the perfect words of Allah, or the complete perfect words of Allah from the evil He created. You'll find that firstly, the Prophet ﷺ have restricted isti'adha, or seeking refuge, and only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it. However, in regards to this affair of worship, this is what we're discussing now. But however, isti'adha in regards to it meaning linguistically, meaning of what the creation can give you of protection, meaning not doing anything connected with worship. We're talking about of what takes place normally amongst people in society. Something happens on the road, you asking protection from a person. We said that type of what? Seeking of protection is what permissible, as long as the person or the individual is able to do it. But this is not the type of seeking or protection, which we're discussing right now. Right now we're speaking about ibadah, of something that's only in the ability of Allah wa ta'ala only. For the only thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do is what the abd or the servant is supposed to seek from Allah wa ta'ala only. That's it. For Allah wa ta'ala is the only one that can protect you from any harm of which the creation will possess, that can inflict you with, in which Allah can tabaraka wa ta'ala can what? Remove it and stop it. From anything of the creation, no matter what it is, even if it's the smallest of an ant, or it is the biggest of those different types of creatures and animals that are out there that can inflict the human being with harm. So here we're talking about the affair of isti'adha, which is of the ibadah. Not the affair in which the human being is able to do, which is a type of protection that can be granted from the human being, which is not pertaining or connected to worship, as we'll discuss inshallah. However, there's what is connected with is the ibadah in regards to what is seeking refuge pertaining to worship, which Allah can only what? Only Allah Ta'ala has the ability to do and remove. When the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned and said, kalimat, notice that the Prophet ﷺ, here in this particular narration, is saying to seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah. So we know that the perfect words of Allah Ta'ala, firstly, number one, the words of Allah is a sifa. It's a characteristic of Allah. Because we know that the speech of Allah is a sifatu min sifatillah. It's a characteristic from the characteristics of Allah, which shows it is permissible for what? For one to seek refuge in Allah and His names and His attributes. All three. Seek refuge in Allah, His names, and His attributes. What's the evidence? The evidence, one of the evidences is here. What Prophet ﷺ say, seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah. So it didn't say Allah, it said what? The perfect what? Complete what? The words. So the speech of Allah Ta'ala is what? It's a characteristic. So sifatu min sifatillah. There's numerous narrations that establishes this matter. From them, it is this hadith. There's a lot. From them, hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Allahumma rahmataka arju fala takinni ila nafsi tarfata aynan. Waslih li sha'ni kullu. We saying, excuse me, I'm sorry. It says, Allahumma برحمتك أستغيث أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين لا إله إلا أنت. He says, oh my Lord, by your mercy I seek your istighatha. By your mercy I seek your type of relief in the times of severe stress and harm. By your rahmah I seek your help. By your rahmah. So here in this particular narration, you'll find that what was about the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned and said, Bi rahmatika astaghith. By your mercy, I'm seeking your relief. By your mercy. Also another narration where a person feels some type of pain in this part of his body. We know the hadith is collected in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said, whoever feels a pain, then let him put his hand over it and say, A'udhu bi'izzatillah. وقدرته من شر ما أجد وأحاذر. That narration where he says that a person meant if he has a pain and let him put his hand over the part where he feels pain and make this dua. Notice the Prophet ﷺ said أعوذ بعزة الله وقدرته من شر ما أجد وأحاذر. Now first he would say Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. Then he would say that 7 times. أعوذ بعزة الله. I seek. It says, A'udhu bi'izzatillah. I seek refuge in the izzatillah, or the honor of Allah, or the domination or the might of Allah Ta'ala and His ability. So here in this narration, what is it saying, everyone? Notice that that the Prophet ﷺ was seeking refuge and commanded that it is certain that the followers of him ﷺ are seeking refuge in the characteristic from the characteristics of Allah in these certain narrations. So here in this particular one, what do we find, everyone? Here, seeking refuge in the characteristic of kalam, the speech of Allah. The perfect words of Allah, which is His speech. So it's permissible for one to seek refuge in Allah or His names or His attributes. So not just the names, not just the lafz al-jalala, the actual wording of Allah Ta'ala, which is lafz al-jalala, but however His names and likewise His attributes. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ here, you'll find in many narrations, you'll find that Imam Ahmad used this hadith to show that these were from the narrations that establish that the speech of Allah Ta'ala is not created. He used it here in this hadith. This was from the evidences and proofs from Ahl Sunnah that that Imam Ahmad used to establish that the speech of Allah is not created. How? You'll find in which when he was refuting the Mu'tazila, when he was refuting the Jahmiyyah, likewise the Mu'tazila, that he said, if it was permissible to seek refuge, if it was permissible to say that the Quran is makhluq, or the Quran is created, if it was permissible to say that, then that would necessitate that in this narration here, that the Prophet ﷺ commanded his ummah to commit shirk. How? Because that if the speech of Allah is created, then that would necessitate here in this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to seek refuge in something that's created. Is it clear what I'm saying? Seek refuge in something that is created. And the speech of Allah Ta'ala is not created. So, but upon the madhab or the mu'taqad, or the belief of the Mu'tazila or the Jahmiyyah, this would necessitate that the Prophet ﷺ commanded his ummah to commit shirk. And hasha wa kalla, that the Prophet ﷺ would command his ummah to commit shirk. It's based upon this hadith that has been mentioned in the chapter. So that means that what, everyone? That the speech of Allah Ta'ala is not created due to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ commanded us to seek refuge in something that is his speech, which is not created, which is a characteristic from the characteristics of Allah. Is it clear what I'm saying so far? So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said, "A'udhu bi kalimatillahi tammat." So number one, this affirms that Allah Ta'ala, his characteristic is not created. That's number one. His speech is not created. Number two, it's permissible to seek refuge in what? Something that is from his characteristics. Or his characteristics in general, excuse me. His characteristics. Due to numerous narration that establishes this matter, as we just discussed. From the different ahadith that we just mentioned of examples. Whether it be the hadith of where a person feels pain, where the Prophet ﷺ said clearly, أعوذ بعزة الله وقدرته من شر ما أجد وأحاذر. I seek refuge in the izzah of Allah, in the might of Allah and His ability. All these are His characteristics. Is this clear, everyone, on what I'm saying? All these are His characteristics. Also, like we said, keep in mind, these are from the narrations which Imam Ahmad established against the Jahmiyyah, showing that the Quran, which is his speech likewise, that the Quran and the speech of Allah in his speech is not created. And if it was created, then that would mean that the Prophet ﷺ commanded his ummah to commit shirk. طيب. We know that the prophets, that Allah Ta'ala, that the Prophet, excuse me, I'm going to jump into narrations. My mind keeps jumping into another narration. That in the ayat in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Ta'ala describes His words as being perfect. As far as in two affairs. What do I mean by that? Well, Allah Ta'ala says in His book, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا لَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. That Allah Ta'ala says in His book, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. That the words of your Lord have been carried out in truth and in it being absolute perfect in justice. What does that mean? When Allah Ta'ala says that His words of your Lord have become complete and carried out, وَتَمَّتْ becomes complete, صِدْقَ وَعَدْلًا. The words of Allah are complete in what? In two affairs. صِدْقًا فِي الْأَخْبَارِ وَعَدْلًا فِي الْأَحْكَامِ. As far as it being 100% truthful in what Allah has informed, and being absolute and precisely accurate and just in the rulings. Both. So that's the meaning of the ayah where it says, وَتَمَّتْ كَلِمَةُ رَبِّكَ صِدْقًا وَعَدْلًا. That the words of your Lord are complete, truthful, and what is informed, صِدْقًا فِي الْأَخْبَارِ وَعَدْلًا فِي الْأَحْكَامِ. وهذا هو المراد بما ذكر الله تبارك وتعالى ضمن هذه الآية. وتمت كلمة ربك صدقا وعدلا صدقا في الأخبار وعدلا في الأحكام. Truthfulness in what He informed تبارك وتعالى, and absolute, precise, and just in what He has legislated in the ahkam, in the rulings. تفضل. You want to ask me something? You sure? طيب. In regards to now, when the Prophet ﷺ said, أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. I seek refuge in the perfect words of Allah, or the complete perfect words of Allah, from the evil He created. From the evil He created. Allah Ta'ala, as we know, from His irada, which Allah Ta'ala intends of the creation, which is from the first categories of what Allah Ta'ala, what He intends or what He wants for the creation. We know that it breaks down into two types, as we know, right, everyone? What Allah wants and intends for this existence, which is called al-iradat al-shar'iyya al-qadariyya al-kawniyya, which is what Allah Ta'ala intends or what He wants for the creation, that is from His qadr, what He is destined and decreed, and what is from this existence, from His creation. It's the first category. This category is one of those categories in which everyone needs to know. If they don't know this, they will go astray. It is one of those questions, it is one of the answers to those questions that everyone always, and I've heard this say, and a lot of us have said this before we were Muslim. Why Allah allowed this to happen to people? Why there isn't no God? Why did God allow innocent children to die? This category right here refutes that. Why God allow people to be tortured? Why God, there's no God? Why is there poor people outside? Why is no God? To the end of it. Why does righteous people always get the short end of the stick and die early, and why do wretched people always seem to get a way out and they get longevity in their life? You understand? It's a whisper of shaitan. That's the reason why the focus is on Aqeedah, a lot of what I'm saying. So it can rectify and twist and tighten the screws in the person's brain. And also what? To rectify the filth of what he has in his heart in regards to his Lord. So for number one, we know from our Aqeedah that we're always supposed to have, and which is from the hardest of affairs, in which shaitan constantly is in the head of the abd, and what he loves is for one to always have bad thoughts about Allah, and which is also from the affairs of Aqeedah, which is in this book, which you'll find that the great Imam also put in the chapter. That he has a chapter in which is from Tawheed, is to always have good thoughts about Allah, which is from monotheism. And as we know the command of the Prophet ﷺ, لا يموتن أحدكم إلا وهو يحسن بالله الظن. Do not let one of you die except that you're having good thoughts about your Lord Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, which is from the most hardest of affairs. due to the fact of what takes place in all of our lives individually, which shaitan utilizes in order to corrupt our thoughts about our Lord. For you'll find, ya ma'ash al-ikhwa, what Allah intends in this creation, as far as what He has preordained and what He has destined in this creation, that it is from those affairs that are what? Of what takes place of good and evil, both. Meaning Allah allows good to happen in His existence and He allows evil to happen in His existence. All of it is under His domination and power. He allows it to happen for a reason of hikmah, of what He knows, and we do not know in certain instances of what's been revealed, except in the Kitaab and Sunnah. But as far as certain affairs and what we see take place and transpire in the world, Allah Ta'ala allows those affairs to take place. And with that first category, what Allah intends in this existence has in it of good and evil both. Which is what? Which is of what we are, or how we perceive it. But in regards to Allah, it is all good. Because evil is not ascribed to Allah. Evil is not ascribed to Allah. However, the evil is in the creation in regards to how we see it, of course. How we perceive it and how we see it. The evil is in the makhluqat, meaning in the maf'ulat. Not in regards to the khaliq. In regards to the what? The creation is evil. Not in regards to the creator, where evil is not ascribed to Him. However, He, tabaraka wa ta'ala, is in control and He allows good and evil to happen, both. Allah allows it to happen for a reason in which Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala knows, which is out of hikmah. A lot of people say, for example, why does the innocent people die? Why does the people that good people die? I mean, good people always seem like they get good at the short end of the stick, and evil people seem like they always get in the way to the end of it, right? Or why does innocent children die to that country where they get sick to the end of it? And I always say to the people, due to the fact Allah Ta'ala allows these affairs to happen, why? Because you do not know what Allah Ta'ala wants for those children that died, or those innocent children that died. Maybe Allah Ta'ala wanted to raise their degrees in Jannah. So at the end of the day, it's still good. Allah Ta'ala allowed their degrees to be raised. So the little bit of what they went through in this dunya is nothing comparison to what is coming in the hereafter. The hereafter is no comparison. The hereafter is everlasting. So it's no comparison to what's the short amount of time in which takes place here in this dunya. So the fact that certain things, you never know what Allah Ta'ala is in His infinite wisdom. Subhanahu Jalla fil ula. For verily the knowledge of Allah is vast, and the only knowledge we've been given is only a little bit. In comparison, which the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned and said, authentic hadith, that look to my knowledge, which Khidr had even said to Musa. And which also likewise, when Khidr had said to Musa, my knowledge and the knowledge you've been given, the knowledge I've been given, is no more than that woodpecker that had just put his little peck in the water and brought it out. That's the type of knowledge we've been given. Nothing. In comparison, do you see the vastness of a sea? He said, that's the type of knowledge that we've been given. A small little few. مَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You haven't been given a knowledge except what? But a little. Also likewise, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, of what he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, of talking about the hereafter in comparison to it, and the knowledge which the people have been given. Instead he says, put your finger in the what? In the ocean and pull it out. What comes back of it? Of that little bit of drops in comparison to the vastness of what? Of the ocean. To let you know how infinite and how complete the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala is. So how can you expect to even fathom how you would know why Allah allows certain things to happen in this dunya? Of what we perceive to be evil, but it pertains to Allah Ta'ala, it is all good. What the people perceive of evil, of what takes place in our bodies, of sicknesses, and also different types of ailments, we perceive it as evil. But we know ultimately it is what? It's for our own better good. Allah Ta'ala by ailments and diseases and things that we go through in our lives raises our degrees and our levels and our reward if we're patient. But a person, when he sees it, he deems it and he perceives it to be what? Evil. But when Allah Ta'ala is still what? It's khair, it's good. For Allah Ta'ala allows these affairs to happen of the in the dunya. It's in the first category, which is what? فَهِيَ عِبَارَةٌ عَنِ الْخَيْرِ وَالشَّرِّ. Of what takes place in this existence of good and evil. Both. All of it is in his iradat Allah al-kawniyya al-qadariyya التي لا بد من حصول الخير والشر معا ولا يتخلف. It will always carry out of good and evil. And it has to carry out of good and evil. For verily of what takes place, of that good and evil, in which Allah Ta'ala, like we said, allows it to happen. Both. And in that, also likewise, this will give an answer, like we said. For number one, we know that, don't write this down yet. We know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ had talked about a man, and this answers the question quickly about a person, for example, who's wretched. And it seems like he's given longevity in his life, and he's given a fair shake all the time, or he's given us so many chances, and he's always given, it seems like he gets away with a lot of nonsense. And in contrast to a person who's salih, it seems like he's always getting the short end of the stick. It's always never fair. He's always getting always going through things and all these other things that take place in his life, and all these different types of affairs that is very irritating takes place, and is very, very, very hard, or different difficulties or hardships. There are numerous that takes place in his life, and he's righteous. Why does he have to go through this? And he's not given longevity. Dies early to the end of it. The Prophet ﷺ made that clear on the day of resurrection of the man who had all the ni'am in his dunya, right everyone? And Allah Ta'ala will bring him. It was all upon what? Kufr and disbelief. So Allah Ta'ala will dip him in hell, one dip. And said, take him out of Jahannam and say to them, did you see any good in your life? Based upon everything you had in this dunya, what Allah has given you in this dunya, what you had of cars, what you had of enjoyment, of what was incorrect. It was all based upon what was incorrect. Do you see any good now? See where you're about to go? The man will say, I never see any good in my life. مَا رَأَيْتُ فِي حَيَاتِي خَيْرًا قَطْ. I didn't see any good in my life. Then the man that was tested, and he had a whole bunch of trials in his dunya, and he was always tested, always going through all these hardship and difficulties, always being tested, and he still was doing what was right. He was being upright. Allah Ta'ala will do the opposite. Dip him, one dip in what? In paradise. Did you see any hardship and difficulty, sadness in your life? Nothing. All of that agrees with what everyone, the first category, which is iradat Allah, al-kawniyya, al-qadariyya. That Allah allows good and evil to happen for a reason. With hikmah that He knows that we don't know. How can you really think you can know the ilm or the knowledge of Allah when it was given as an example that a person just plucks just a little prick of water out of an ocean. And that is the amount of knowledge we've been given in comparison to the vastness of an ocean. That is to give us an example of how infinite and how vast, not comparisons how they're exactly the same, but giving us a similarity of how vast the knowledge of Allah Ta'ala is. How vast it is. So the good and evil has to happen, but at the same time, what everyone? Evil is not ascribed to Allah. It's due to the hadith, which is a Sahih Muslim. Which is in dua al-istiftah. I'm sorry, exactly, it's in the hadith. It's a long hadith, dua al-istiftah. Hold on for a second. No, alhamdulillah. اللهم وجهت وجهي الذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له. If I said this dua al-istiftah this long, I did this one time and people was like, what is he talking about? It seems like you're reciting the whole surah. So this is a dua al-istiftah. This is what you open up a surah with. اللهم وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له بذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين ربي أنت الملك لا إله إلا أنت ربي وأنا عبدك ظلمت نفسي واعترفت بذنبي فاغفر لي ذنوبي جميعا إنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت واهدني لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت واصرف عني سيئها لا يصرف عني سيئها إلا أنت لبيك واستعديك والخير كله في يديك والشر ليس إليك أنا بك وإليك تبارك وتعاليت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Beautiful dua. Has in it Tawheed, the belief in the Qadr, all of it. That's the dua al-istiftah, which you open up in the salat. I did that before. Somebody thought I was doing some bid'ah. That's a dua that has actually been authentic and established. So my brother said, why is he so silent for so long? Tafadal. You call me then. All of that? No, that was in the dua al-istiftah. Before you was right. That narration is in what you will open the salat with before you start reciting. Supplication for the opening of prayer. Allah Akbar Allah. Say Hisn Muslim. Say Hisn Muslim. Ashhadu la ilaha illallah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. محمد رسول لا قوة إلا بالله. Oh, some of you guys was fasting, huh? Some of them was fasting. Inshallah, I'm going to start fasting tomorrow, inshallah. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمد السيد الفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعدته. I think it's Tuesday. Did the brother say it was the Eid supposed to be Tuesday? دعاء الاستغفار. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. No, I was just thinking more. Some of the brothers was fasting. I'm not going to prolong. If you guys were fasting, then I'll stop because I don't want to make it too long. هل يوجد عندنا من هو صائم اليوم؟ No, don't worry. التكرار أحلى. زي say التكرار أحلى. طيب. So, why are we mentioning this? For the first thing, the إرادة الله الكونية القدرية. إرادة الله الكونية القدرية لابد أن ينفذ ولا يتخلف منها شيء سواء كان شرا خيرا أو شرا. So it has to carry out regardless of what, whether it be good or evil. Both of them have to happen. فلا بد من حصول الخير والشر معا. Both of the good and evil have to what? Take place. Has to happen. But like we said, evil is not ascribed to Allah. Then you have the second category, which is إرادة Allah الشرعية. But Allah Ta'ala, what He decrees of what? Which is in His Kitaab and Sunnah. وهي عبارة عن كل ما يحبه الله. And that means that's everything that Allah Ta'ala loves. There's nothing in Kitaab and Sunnah except Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala loves it. So that's everything that's mahbub. There's love to Allah subhanahu jalla fil ula. طيب. How is this connected or relevant to what we're speaking about now? How everyone? How is it connected? So now it's connected dots. Why? Because when the Prophet ﷺ said from evil and what he created, meaning to let you know that what everyone, that Allah Ta'ala does create evil. So a person that doesn't know that particular category, he would say, well, why what's it got to be evil? Why can't everything just be all good? Allah Ta'ala creates evil in order to what? To test the ibad. To test them. For it to be a test. How will we know, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentions, it says, the different levels of paradise? How did it be levels except it has to be determined by the different tests and trials of hardships and difficulties that people go through? How will one be able to know who is the true individual to show his faith or what it's upon, whether it be strong or otherwise? Except that it's always exposed except through what everyone? Difficulties and trials and evils. He was mentioning the different types of hikam of why evil was created. And why, for example, the one who's the head of all evil, who's Iblis, was created. He was created to test the ibad, to test them. To see whether or not they were going to what? Follow his call to the ones who were rejected in order to what? For those who can have a tremendous reward for those who what? Rejected his call. For Iblis was created in order to test the slaves and be utilized as a test for them. And Iblis is the head of evil. For all these affairs, like we said, who he was created by who? By Allah Ta'ala. Allah created it out of some wisdom that we know. By some wisdom. By wisdom that Allah knows and we do not know. Or some of the wisdoms have been revealed to us by some of the texts and the proofs and evidences. But that which we do not know, then we trust it to Allah Ta'ala. But however, not everything that Allah Ta'ala created has evil in it. Not everything Allah Ta'ala has evil in it. However, you are seeking refuge in Allah in this particular dua from everything that has in it what everyone? That has in it evil. You're seeking refuge in Allah Ta'ala from his evil, and for that reason we say, as far as the makhluqat, or what is created, then it breaks down into how many categories? It breaks down into 3. Number 1, that which is just pure evil. Pure evil. For example, fire, Iblis. And take into consideration, of course, it's their essence. But we know that all of that is by the hikmah of Allah. Like, for example, fire, what burns you, what have you. Those things are what they call sharrun mahab, absolute pure evil. Clear what I'm saying so far, everyone? Then you have the second category, which is what? Khayrun mahab, absolute good. And what all is in it is good. Such as paradise, such as the messengers of the malaika, all of them are khayrun mahab. They're absolute pure what? Pure good. Paradise, the messengers, the prophets, the malaika. Then you have from the creation that have good and evil with them, both. From them is what? The jinn, human beings, the animals. So here in this instance, you're seeking refuge in Allah Ta'ala from those things of the creation that has in it evil. That has in it evil. Notice the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and said in this particular narration, he said, لَمْ يَضُرَّهُ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى يَبْتَحِلَ مِنْ مَنْزِلِهِ ذَلِكَ. He says that a person, if he does this dua, he said that Allah Ta'ala will give him that protection until nothing will harm him until he leaves off that place of his. There's a story what happened even with the great Imam Al-Qurtubi rahimahullah. That he said about this even based upon his own experience, Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi. He said, هذا خبر صحيح. Listen to what he says. وقول صادق علمنا صدقه دليلا وتجربة فإني منذ سمعت هذا الخبر عملت عليه فلم يضرني شيء إلى أن تركته فلدغتني عقرب بالمهدبة ليلا فتفكرت في نفسي فإذا بي قد نسيت فإذا أنا قد نسيت أن أتعوذ بتلك الكلمات. He said this narration is authentic. It's a statement that is true. He says, in which we've known and established is truthfulness. He says, as far as the evidence and proof that has came from us, from the Kitaab and Sunnah, and for what we experience, tajribatan. He said, verily, as soon as I left off this authentic narration, as soon as I heard it, he said, I started to apply it. عملت عليه فلم يضرني شيء. I started applying it until nothing harmed me. He says, until the moment I left it off. He says, when I left it off, he says, a scorpion bit me in a particular place called Mahdaba. I think that's a particular, like a desolate place in the night. And he said, and I thought about it myself, and I said, He said, then I forgot that I sought refuge in Allah by those words. So he's saying that based upon, not only from Dalil, but also from experience that it does work. Also from those authentic narrations, such as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said, Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma ismihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'un alim, la lam yadurruhu shay'. That's another dua that a person say in the morning and the evening. He said, Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru, in the name of Allah, nothing harms him with his name. La yadurru ma ismihi shay', nothing harms him by his name. Nothing of the heavens and the earth, and he is Sami' Alim, all hearing, and he is all Alim, he is all knowledgeable and all aware, all knowledgeable. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever makes that dua, nothing will harm him. Nothing. That dua, one would say in the morning and evening 3 times. There's a narration which is in Ibn Majah upon Aban. And I think he narrated this narration. He said that he had received some type of what they call shalalun or fashil. That he received some type of harm. I think it was in his arm, became paralyzed. So the narrator hadith looked at him funny, like, how are you paralyzed and you relate to me that hadith? How is that you've been afflicted in that test while that happened to you? So and then he said to him, when he looked at him funny, he says, Allah inna al-hadith kama qultu wa haddattuka bih. ولكن نسيت أن أدعو الله تبارك وتعالى به حتى أمضى الله تبارك وتعالى علي قدره. He says, he said the hadith is exactly how I narrated to you. He said, however, I forgot to ask Allah to make dua to Allah by making a supplication until Allah allow His qadr to take over until you see this is what happened to me. So these type of supplications is what? Is to give protection to a person from all types of affairs of evil, and from them is this dua which we mentioned in this narration. So the evil in which the Prophet ﷺ has sought refuge, in which he commanded the ummah, was based upon those 3 categories. Number 1 is, like we said, from that which contains pure evil, or something that has in it some type of evil, from the animals, from human beings, or from the jinn, which has good and evil with them. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? We'll stop here because I know some of the people are probably faster. I forgot. Fine, we'll stop here. Any questions about the lesson? Tafadhal. Qadariyah. Absolutely. This hadith is used. You can use it against the Qadariyah. Of those who say that Allah Ta'ala is well, which hadith? Which one? Which one? Absolutely. You talk about the hadith Khawla? Absolutely. Absolutely. You only seek a refuge from the one who can give you protection. Yeah, they believe that Allah Ta'ala, that the slaves, actually the Mashiach of Allah Ta'ala is not applied for the human beings. Rather, the human beings are the ones who are responsible for creating their own actions. And that's incorrect. Rather, their actions and the what? The people and their actions are created, both. But still at the same time, you still have your own choice. No, that is a refutation against the Qadariyah. I'm sorry, everyone. Any questions about the lesson? Do you have a question, Salahuddin? Any questions? Nothing. جيد. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.